I sat in the oncology waiting room, the sterile smell of antiseptic clinging to my coat, when my phone vibrated once against the wooden armrest. A single bank alert. Outgoing wire, $2,400,000. Approved by Damien Voss, co-trustee. My thumb hovered over the screen. The numbers did not blur. They sharpened. $2.4 million. Gone in the time it took a nurse to call the next patient. I closed the app, slipped the phone into my bag, and stood. My knees did not shake. My pulse stayed steady, the way it always did when the numbers moved without my permission. The drive back to the house took 23 minutes. I knew the route by heart, past the yacht club, along the winding lane lined with century-old oaks, up the private drive that ended at the glass-walled, modernist mansion my late husband had designed for us. The sound glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like it always had. Nothing looked different from the outside. But the front door would not open. I tried my key twice. The deadbolt refused to turn. I rang the bell. Soft footsteps approached from inside. The door cracked open 6 inches. Serafina stood there in cream cashmere, hair swept into the kind of effortless knot that cost $400 at the salon. She smiled the small, pitying smile I had seen her practice in mirrors. "Eleanor, we thought it best you didn't have to worry about the stairs anymore." She extended a thin manila envelope through the gap. I took it. The paper was still warm from her hand. Inside, 1 page, typed in crisp 12-point Times New Roman. "We've decided you need assisted living. Sign here for power of attorney transfer and relocation consent. The facility has already been chosen. Monthly cost, $14,800. We will cover it from the trust." Below the signature line, Damien had already signed for both of them. I read the paragraph again. Then I looked up at my daughter-in-law. "Of course, darling," I said. My voice sounded exactly like the woman who used to read bedtime stories to their children. "Let me read it carefully first." Serafina's smile tightened at the corners. "Take all the time you need. We changed the locks for your safety. The code for the gate is new too." She closed the door. The lock clicked back into place with a soft, final sound. I walked back to my car, envelope in hand, and sat behind the wheel for exactly 4 minutes. Then I opened my tablet, pulled up the house security app I had installed myself 3 years ago when Damien first started drinking too much at dinner parties. The footage loaded. There they were in the master bedroom, my bedroom, laughing while Serafina dropped my late husband's Patek Philippe collection into her new limited edition Birkin. Damien held up the rose gold one, the one Richard had worn the day we closed our first 7-figure deal, and pretended to check the time. "Tick-tock, old account," he said to the camera he didn't know was rolling. "Time to move Mom into the nice, quiet place where she can't sign anything anymore." Serafina's laugh was light, musical. "She'll thank us later, when the cognitive tests come back." I closed the tablet. The afternoon light slanted across the dashboard. I felt the familiar cold clarity settle behind my eyes, the same feeling I used to get when a trust beneficiary tried to hide a withdrawal. Numbers never lied. People always did. And right now the numbers were screaming. I started the engine and drove away from the house I had paid for, the house where I had raised their children, the house where my husband had drawn his last breath while holding my hand. I did not cry. Crying was for women who still believed love could balance the books. I was done balancing their books. I drove for 47 minutes before the first hotel sign appeared on the coastal road. The Harbour View Suites was nothing like the glass mansion. No marble foyer, no wine fridge humming in the background, no security cameras worth $18,700 a year. Just a modest 3-story building with white shutters and a small parking lot facing the water. Room rate, $487 a night. I paid with the one Amex they hadn't thought to cancel yet. The card cleared. I took that as a sign. The front desk clerk, a woman in her late 20s with tired eyes, slid the keycard across the counter without asking questions. "Ocean view, top floor, ma'am. Quietest room we have." I thanked her with the same polite nod I once gave board members who underestimated me. The elevator smelled of lemon polish and salt air. When I stepped into room 312, the door clicked shut behind me, and the silence felt earned. A queen bed, a desk by the window, a mini fridge that actually worked. I set my small overnight bag on the luggage rack, the same bag I had packed for my last oncology appointment. Inside, 2 changes of clothes, my reading glasses, and the slim leather portfolio that held every password I had ever needed. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. The password was printed on a little card taped to the lamp. Harbour 2026. Simple. Forgettable. Unlike the cloud backup I had set up myself in 2019, right after Richard died, when I first suspected Damien might treat the family trust like his personal ATM, I typed the master credentials. The folder opened instantly. 14 years of documents. Every wire transfer. Every approval I had signed out of love. I downloaded them all. PDFs, scanned checks, emails, straight to an encrypted drive the size of a credit card. The progress bar filled slowly. While it ran, I opened the main trust ledger on my phone. Balance before the wire, $18,742,000. Balance now, $16,342,000. $2.4 million gone in one afternoon. I stared at the number until it stopped feeling like money and started feeling like evidence. At 11:47 p.m, the phone rang. Damien's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Mom." His voice was tight, the way it got when a client threatened to pull their portfolio. "Stop being dramatic. The doctor said your memory is slipping. We're only trying to protect you." I looked out at the dark Sound. A single navigation light moved across the water, slow and steady. "Memory is fine," I said. My tone was even, almost pleasant. Bank statements, however, tell a different story. He paused. I could hear Serafina whispering in the background something about she's bluffing. "You're in a hotel?" he asked. "Jesus, Mom, come home. We'll get you the best care." "The facility has a waiting list, but I made a call." I opened the first PDF I had just downloaded, the one showing the $1.1 million he had moved to his investment opportunities over the last 38 months. I didn't mention it yet. Not tonight. "Damien," I said, "do you remember the night your father died? He made me promise the trust would stay intact. Not 1 cent moved without both of us agreeing in writing." He laughed, short and sharp. "Dad's been gone 12 years. Things change." "You're not thinking clearly." I let the silence stretch. 5 full seconds. "Things do change," I replied. "For instance, the cloud backup you forgot existed. It still works." He hung up. The line went dead with a soft click. I set the phone down beside the laptop and watched the last file finish downloading. 100%. I slept 4 hours that night. No dreams. Just the low hum of the heater and the distant sound of waves. When I woke, the sky was the colour of steel. I made coffee in the little machine on the dresser, black, no sugar, and opened my email. One new message. From Marcus Hale, attorney at law. Subject line, urgent. Legal notice received. I clicked it. Mrs. Voss. Damien and Serafina Voss filed a petition for mental incompetence this morning at 8:14 a.m. They've attached medical notes from Dr. Langford dated 3 weeks ago and screenshots of unanswered texts. Hearing scheduled in 19 days. I've already requested the full docket. We need to meet. Today. Marcus. I read the email twice. Then I closed the laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The water looked colder in the morning light. 19 days. I had spent 12 years quietly fixing their mistakes, paying off Damien's gambling debts when the casinos called at 2 a.m., covering Serafina's $340,000 in wellness retreats that were really luxury shopping trips in Miami, funding the grandchildren's private school tuition while they posted photos of family vacations I was never invited to join. And now they wanted to declare me incompetent so they could finish emptying the trust I had guarded like it was the last piece of my husband still breathing. I felt the cold clarity settle again, deeper this time. Not anger, not yet, just the precise, mechanical click of a plan forming. I picked up the phone and dialed Marcus's direct line. He answered on the first ring. "Eleanor," he said, voice calm and professional. "I was hoping you'd call quickly." "I'm at the Harbour View Suites," I told him. "Room 312. Bring every form you have for counter-petitions and trust revocations. And bring the 2011 trust addendum my husband signed, the one they never knew existed." Marcus exhaled once, the sound of a man who had seen this movie before. "I'll be there in 40 minutes. Coffee?" "Black," I said. "And Marcus, bill me for the rush. I want this done cleanly." I hung up, walked to the mini-fridge and took out the small bottle of water. It cost $8. I didn't care. The numbers were moving again, but this time they were moving in my direction. I hung up the phone and checked the time. 43 minutes until Marcus arrived. I used every one of them. First, I changed into the second outfit from my bag, a simple charcoal cashmere sweater and black trousers. No jewellery except my wedding band. The woman in the mirror looked exactly like the trustee who had once stared down a room full of aggressive heirs and won. I brushed my hair back, pinned it neatly, and waited. Marcus knocked at 9 minutes past the hour. He carried 2 large coffees and a slim leather briefcase that looked older than his law degree. The conference room on the first floor of the hotel was small, wood-panelled, and smelled of fresh coffee and old money. Exactly the kind of place where quiet empires were either built or dismantled. We sat at the round table by the window. The Sound stretched grey and restless beyond the glass. Marcus slid one coffee toward me, black, no lid. He opened the briefcase and laid out the first stack of documents like a dealer laying cards. 14 years, he said. "Let's start there." I opened the top folder. Inside were the wire transfer records I had printed from the cloud at 2 a.m. Page after page of approvals signed in my own handwriting. I had signed every single one. "Damien's investment opportunities," I said quietly. $1.1 million over 38 months, each transfer labelled family support. Marcus nodded once. "And Serafina's wellness retreats. $340,000. Miami, Aspen, Turks and Caicos. All charged to the trust as medical adjacent expenses. Their attorneys will call it legitimate family assistance. We will call it looting." He flipped to the next page. A highlighted column showed the dates. Every withdrawal happened within 48 hours of one of my oncology appointments. They had timed it. They had watched my calendar. I felt the cold clarity sharpen again. Not rage, not yet. Just the clean click of pieces locking into place. Marcus leaned forward. "They filed the mental incompetence petition at 8:14 this morning. They attached 3 notes from Dr. Langford. The man has never examined you in person. They also included screenshots of texts you allegedly ignored. 19 days until the hearing." He slid a fresh folder across the polished wood. The cover read, "Counter Petition and Revocation Package." Inside are the documents that undo everything they just tried to do. Power of attorney revocation, removal of co-trustees, motion to freeze any further distributions pending full audit, and the 2011 addendum your husband signed in this very office. The one that names you sole discretionary trustee for life. They never knew it existed, because Richard made sure the file stayed in my vault. I opened the folder. The pages were crisp, the ink still dark. My husband's signature at the bottom, strong, certain, the same hand that had once signed our first $1 million deal while I held his other hand under the table. I picked up the pen Marcus offered. It was heavy, silver, the kind lawyers use when they want you to remember the moment. My hand did not shake, not even a tremor. I signed every line where my name appeared. Eleanor Margaret Voss. The same signature I had used for 41 years. Marcus watched me finish the last page. He did not smile, but something in his eyes changed. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "They think they own the trust," he said. His voice was low, almost conversational. "They don't. Not a single share, not a single cent after today." I capped the pen and set it down. "How long until they feel it?" 48 hours for the freeze notices to hit their bank. 72 for the co-trustee removal to be recorded. After that, every withdrawal they attempt will bounce with a paper trail straight to the court. He gathered the signed documents, slipped them into his briefcase, and stood. "I'll file everything before noon. You stay here. Rest. The hotel bill is now on the trust's emergency reserve, the one they can't touch. I already moved $50,000 into it this morning." I walked him to the lobby. The same tired-eyed clerk glanced up, then quickly back to her screen. Marcus paused at the revolving door. "Eleanor," he said, "most people in your position cry or scream. You haven't done either. That's why we're going to win." I gave him the small nod I used to give Richard when the markets dropped 3%. Winning isn't the point anymore. Watching the numbers balance is. He left. I went back upstairs. The room was still quiet. I opened my laptop again and refreshed the trust dashboard one more time. The $2.4 million wire still showed as processed, but next to it now sat a new line in red. Pending legal hold. Notice served. I closed the laptop and stepped onto the small balcony. The wind off the sound carried salt and the faint cry of gulls. I stood there for a long time, hands resting on the iron rail, breathing in the cold air until my lungs felt clean. At 4:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. Not from the bank. From Instagram. Serafina had tagged me in a story. I opened it. The video showed her standing in the center of my former bedroom. The walls had already been stripped of the soft grey paint I chose with Richard. Drop cloths covered the floor. A painter's ladder stood where my antique dresser used to be. Serafina held a paint swatch up to the light, something called Arctic Mist. She smiled straight into the camera, the same pitying smile from the doorway this morning. "Finally redecorating the mausoleum," she said, voice bright and breezy. "New beginnings, new energy. Can't wait to show you all the before and after. Hashtag grateful heart, hashtag fresh start." The story ended with a heart emoji and a location tag. Voss Residence, Connecticut. I watched it 3 times. Then I closed the app, set the phone face down on the desk, and poured myself a glass of water from the $8 bottle in the mini fridge. The numbers were still moving, but now they were moving exactly where I needed them to go. The next morning, the hotel phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. The front desk clerk's voice was hesitant. "Mrs. Voss, I'm sorry to disturb you. There's a gentleman here from your bank. He says it's urgent." I already knew. I told her to send him up. 2 minutes later, a man in a navy suit stood in my doorway holding a slim folder. His name tag read, Regional Compliance Officer. He did not smile. "Ma'am, we received instructions this morning to freeze all accounts linked to the Voss Family Trust where you are listed as secondary holder. Checking, savings, and the small investment account." Balances have been placed on administrative hold pending court review. I took the folder. Inside were 3 pages of legalese and a summary statement. Checking, $0. Savings, $0. Investment account, $0. They had moved fast. Damien and Serafina must have called their attorney the second they saw the counter-petition hit the docket. I thanked the officer, closed the door, and stepped onto the balcony. The sound was flat and grey under low clouds. I ordered room service tea from the menu, $9 for a pot of English breakfast. When it arrived, I carried the tray outside and sat in the single metal chair. The steam rose in slow curls. I watched the balances on my phone drop one by one as the system processed the freeze. 0. 0. 0. I took a sip. The tea was hot and bitter and perfect. They thought this would break me. They thought cutting off the small accounts, the ones I used for groceries and dry cleaning, would send me crawling back to beg. They had no idea the real money had never been in those accounts. I finished the tea, went inside, and opened my laptop. The second trust. The one Richard had created in 2011, 6 months before the first shadow appeared on his lung scans. He had sat in Marcus's office and said, "If anything happens to me, Eleanor decides everything, alone." I typed the private access code. The dashboard loaded. Balance, $4,712,000, untouched. Beneficiary, Eleanor Margaret Voss, sole discretionary trustee. No co-signers, no children listed. Just my name and a quiet line of code that had waited 15 years for this exact morning. I transferred $250,000 to Marcus Hale's retainer account. The confirmation appeared instantly. Then I wired another $75,000 to a private investigator whose name Marcus had given me the day before. Specialist in financial forensics, licensed in 3 states, reputation for never missing an offshore trail. The wires cleared in 11 seconds. I closed the laptop and stood. My reflection in the window looked exactly the same as it had yesterday. Calm, composed, 70 years old, and still breathing. At 10:43 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "Eleanor, this is ridiculous. Release the freeze, or we will have no choice but to accelerate the incompetence hearing. Damien." I read it once, then I deleted it. The rest of the day passed in quiet increments. I walked the short path along the water. I bought a newspaper from the lobby stand and read the business section without really seeing the words. At 3:30 p.m., I returned to the room and opened the encrypted drive again. I reviewed the 2011 addendum one more time, the same way I used to review quarterly reports before board meetings. Every comma was still perfect. At 6:02 p.m. exactly, a new email arrived. Subject line: First Forensic Report, Confidential. Sender: PI Secure Analytics. I clicked it. The attachment was 11 pages. The summary on page 1 was written in clean bullet points. Damien R. Voss. Subject analysis. Over the past 26 months, Subject has diverted $983,000 in client performance bonuses and referral fees from Voss Capital Partners into a Cayman Islands account numbered 4782-119 at First Caribbean Bank. Transfers routed through a Shell LLC registered in Delaware under the name Lang Family Holdings. Beneficial owner listed as Serafina Lang Voss. All transfers executed while Subject held power of attorney on the main family trust. Bank statements attached. Wire confirmations attached. Time-stamped emails between Subject and Cayman banker attached. I scrolled slowly through the attachments. Each page showed a new number. $47,000 on March 12th. $62,000 on June 19th. $119,000 on October 3rd. Every transfer happened the week after one of my chemotherapy sessions. They had celebrated my weakness with offshore deposits. I closed the email and stood at the window again. The sun had dropped behind the trees, turning the sound the colour of old steel. My phone rang. Damien this time. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. "Mom?" His voice cracked on the first syllable. "Whatever you think you're doing, stop. We're family." I waited 2 full seconds. "Family," I repeated. The word tasted like the cold tea left in the pot. "Interesting choice of word, Damien." Seraphina's voice cut in on speaker. "Eleanor, this is insane. You're scaring the children." I almost laughed. Almost. "I'm not the one who changed the locks while I was at oncology," I said. My voice stayed level. "I'm not the one who moved $2.4 million before lunch. And I'm certainly not the one who opened an account in the Caymans with $983,000 of client money." Silence. I could hear their breathing. Damien tried again. "Those are business expenses. You don't understand hedge fund accounting." "Lies," I said. The word was short, clean, final. All lies. I ended the call. The room was quiet again. Only the low hum of the mini-fridge and the distant sound of waves. I walked to the desk, opened the laptop one last time and forwarded the entire forensic report to Marcus with a single line. Use everything. No mercy. Then I poured the last of the cold tea down the sink and turned off the lights. The numbers had spoken, and they were not finished. Seraphina arrived at the hotel lobby at 11:19 a.m. the next morning. I knew the exact time because the front desk called up to my room the moment her Louboutins clicked across the marble floor. "Mrs. Voss, your daughter-in-law is here. She says it's urgent." I told them to send her up. Then I sat at the small desk by the window and waited. The sound was brighter today, sunlight cutting sharp lines across the water. I had already reviewed the forensic report twice. The Cayman numbers were burned into my mind like wire confirmations. $983,000 in 26 months. The knock came at 11:27. 3 light taps, polite as a hotel maid. I opened the door. Seraphina stood there in a cream silk blouse and black pencil skirt, the kind of outfit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was not. It was the same calculated curve she used in her Instagram stories, tight at the corners, eyes already scanning for weakness. "Eleanor," she said, voice honeyed and low, "this is ridiculous. Come home. We'll get you the best care. The facility has a garden." "You always loved gardens." I stepped aside without a word. She walked in, heels sinking slightly into the carpet. Her eyes flicked over the queen bed, the open laptop, the single suitcase still unpacked. She set her handbag on the desk like she owned the room. I gestured to the small round table by the window. "Sit." She did, crossing her legs with practiced grace. "I ordered something from the café downstairs, a kale smoothie. $28, but it's worth it. You should try one. Antioxidants are crucial at your age." The waiter arrived 2 minutes later, pushing a small cart. Seraphina signed a bill to my room without asking. She took a long sip through the metal straw, leaving a faint coral imprint on the rim. For 12 full minutes, she talked. I timed it on the clock beside the bed. She spoke about stress accelerating cognitive decline, about how the doctor's notes were only precautionary, about how the grandchildren missed their nana, and how a quiet assisted living wing would be so much better for everyone. Her voice never rose. It stayed soft, reasonable, the same tone she used when she wanted me to approve another 6-figure withdrawal for family wellness. I let her finish, every word. Then I reached into the leather portfolio on the desk and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. The Cayman statements. Page 1 of the forensic report, highlighted in quiet grey. Her manicured nail paused mid-air above the smoothie glass. The nail was the colour of pale blush, $85 at the salon, I knew from old receipts. The finger trembled once, almost imperceptibly. "Where did you get these?" she asked. The honey had vanished from her voice. I folded my hands in my lap. Same place I got the power of attorney revocation papers. Same place I got the motion to remove you and Damien as co-trustees. Same place I got the temporary account freeze that hit this morning. She stared at the numbers. $47,000. $62,000. $119,000. Each one dated the week after one of my treatments. "This is fabricated," she said. The words came out too fast. "Damien's clients are complicated. Hedge funds move money all the time. You don't understand modern finance." I leaned forward slightly. The sunlight caught the edge of my wedding band. "I understand $983,000 routed through a shell LLC called Lang Family Holdings. I understand the beneficial owner is listed as Serafina Lang Voss. I understand every transfer was approved while I was in chemotherapy, and you were posting photos of new handbags." Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. The smoothie sat untouched now, condensation sliding down the tall glass like slow tears. "Eleanor, please, we can fix this. Come home." "We'll drop the petition. No," I said. The word was short, clean, final. She tried again, voice cracking on the second syllable. "The children. Think of the children." "I am," I replied. They deserved to know their parents didn't try to steal their inheritance while their grandmother was fighting cancer. Serafina stood so quickly the chair scraped backward. The smoothie wobbled but did not spill. She snatched her handbag, the same Birkin that had held my husband's watches 2 days earlier. "You're making a terrible mistake," she whispered. I stayed seated. "The mistake was made when you changed the locks. I'm simply correcting the books." She left without closing the door all the way. I heard her heels echo down the hallway, faster than when she arrived. The elevator dinged. Then silence. I stood, walked to the table and looked at the smoothie. $28. Untouched. I carried the glass to the sink and poured it down the drain. The kale smell lingered for a moment, bitter and artificial. My phone buzzed on the desk. A bank alert. Not mine. The trust's notification service still copied me on every attempted transaction. Outgoing wire, $180,000. Requested by Damien Voss, co-trustee. Status, rejected. Legal hold applied. I read the line twice. Damien had tried again. Same day, same desperation. The wire had bounced automatically, the system flagging it the instant it hit the frozen account. A digital slap delivered in real time. I set the phone down and stepped onto the balcony. The wind off the sound was colder now, carrying the sharp scent of salt and pine. Below, a single sailboat cut across the water, white sail bright against the grey. Serafina would be calling him right now. I could picture the conversation, her voice rising for the first time in years, his answers clipped and furious. The numbers were closing in, and they still had 15 days until the hearing. I closed my eyes for 3 seconds, breathing in the cold air until my lungs felt steady again. The game had changed. They just didn't know how completely yet. The mental incompetence hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 9 a.m. sharp. I arrived at the courthouse in a simple navy coat, the wool still carrying the faint salt air from the hotel balcony. No jewellery except my wedding band, no makeup, no expression that could be twisted into weakness. The courtroom smelled of polished oak and old paper. High windows let in slanted morning light that fell across the defendant's table like a spotlight. Damien and Serafina were already seated with their 2 attorneys, expensive suits, monogrammed briefcases, the kind that cost more than my monthly hotel bill. Next to them sat a hired geriatric expert, a man in his 60s with a clipboard and a practiced look of concern. He had never met me. I took my seat beside Marcus. He gave me one calm nod. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The gavel came down once, soft but final. Damien's lead attorney rose first. He spoke for 23 minutes. He presented cherry-picked notes from Dr. Langford, 3 pages, all dated after my last treatment. He showed screenshots of texts I had not answered within 48 hours. He played a short clip of Serafina's voice describing how confused I had seemed the last time we spoke. "Mrs. Voss is a danger to herself and to the family assets," he said. "We ask the court to appoint Damien and Serafina Voss as guardians of her person and estate." Serafina dabbed at her eye with a tissue. It was dry. I sat perfectly still. My hands rested on the table, fingers relaxed. I let them finish every word. Marcus stood when it was our turn. He did not raise his voice. He simply opened a thick binder and began laying pages on the evidence table one by one. 47 pages. Every transfer I had ever authorized from the main trust. Every handwritten note I had attached at the time. Every email confirming the purpose. Cross-referenced with bank statements, wire confirmations, and my personal ledger entries. "These documents show 14 years of meticulous management," Marcus said. "Not 1 cent unaccounted for. The petitioners, however, have moved $2.4 million in a single afternoon without consultation. They have also diverted $983,000 into a Cayman Islands account through a shell LLC. The forensic report is Exhibit B." The judge leaned forward slightly. Damien's attorney tried to object. The judge silenced him with one raised finger. Then the judge looked directly at me. "Mrs. Voss," he said, voice even, "do you feel capable of managing your own affairs?" I met his eyes. The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the air system. "I feel capable of managing theirs as well," I answered. My voice carried across the room without effort. Short, clear, final. The judge did not smile, but something shifted in the air. Court recessed for lunch at 11:47 a.m. We filed out into the hallway. Damien tried to catch my eye. I did not give it to him. Serafina whispered furiously into her phone, heels clicking too fast on the marble floor. Marcus and I walked to a quiet bench by the windows. He handed me a bottle of water. I took it, but did not open it. "You did well," he said quietly. I nodded once. The numbers did the work. We returned to the courtroom at 1:15 p.m. The judge was already seated. His face had changed. "Before we resume," he said, "the court has received an emergency motion. It arrived during the recess." He held up a single sheet. "From the Securities and Exchange Commission. They reference account number 4782-119 at First Caribbean Bank in the Cayman Islands. They are requesting immediate cooperation in an ongoing investigation into possible misappropriation of client funds by Damien R. Voss of Voss Capital Partners." The paper trembled slightly in the judge's hand. Damien went the color of old paper. Serafina's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. The judge continued, voice flat. "Given the new information, the court is issuing a temporary freeze on every account the petitioners have touched in the last 30 days. $3.2 million will remain locked until further notice. All co-trustee authorities are suspended, effective immediately. The mental incompetence petition is tabled pending full financial audit." He looked at Damien and Serafina. "You will not approach Mrs. Voss. You will not contact her except through counsel. Any violation will result in contempt charges." The gavel came down. I stood slowly. My coat felt lighter. Damien rose too quickly. His chair scraped loud against the floor. He took one step toward the aisle, then stopped. His expensive attorney placed a hand on his arm. Serafina stared straight ahead, mascara still perfect, face blank. I walked past them without a glance. Marcus followed. In the hallway, the air felt different, cleaner. My phone stayed silent in my pocket. No more alerts. No more desperate wires. But as we reached the exit doors, a delivery notification buzzed once. I glanced at the screen. The hotel had received a package. Plain cardboard box, no return address. Inside, I would learn later, were my late husband's watch collection. Returned without note. The numbers had spoken again, and the silence that followed was louder than any courtroom gavel. The gavel had barely finished echoing when the courtroom emptied. I walked out beside Marcus into the bright hallway, the navy coat still buttoned neatly at the throat. My steps were measured. No hurry, no triumph in my posture, just the quiet satisfaction of numbers finally balancing after years of red ink. Damien and Serafina followed 10 paces behind. I could hear the sharp click of her Louboutins trying to keep up with his longer stride. Their attorneys flanked them like bodyguards who had already lost the fight. We reached the small courthouse café on the ground floor. It was nothing special. Formica tables, a glass case of stale pastries, a bored barista scrolling her phone. Damien stopped at the counter and pulled out his wallet. Serafina stood beside him, chin high, as if the morning's ruling had been a minor inconvenience. 2 bottles of water, Damien said. His voice was too loud for the small space. And whatever that pastry is. The barista rang it up. That'll be $14. He slid his joint platinum card across the counter. The machine beeped once. Red light. Declined. He frowned and tried again. Same beep. Same red light. Serafina laughed, short and brittle. Try mine. She handed over her own card, the one with her name embossed in gold below his. Declined. The barista looked up, apologetic. Sorry, both cards are showing a temporary hold. Damien's face went the colour of old paper, the same shade I had seen on the forensic report when the Cayman balances first loaded. Serafina's Instagram smile, the one she had practiced for years, finally cracked. Her lips pressed into a thin line. The perfect makeup could not hide the flush creeping up her neck. Marcus touched my elbow lightly. We can leave now, Eleanor. I did not move. I wanted to see this moment finish. Damien leaned across the counter, voice dropping to a furious whisper. This is a mistake. Call your manager. We have a 7-figure trust. There's no way. The barista shrugged. System says legal hold. I can't override it. Serafina turned toward me then. For the first time in years, she looked straight at me without the pitying tilt of her head. Her eyes were wide, almost pleading. Eleanor, this is going too far. The children need stability. We need... I cut her off with one raised finger. The same gesture the judge had used earlier. No, I said. The word was soft. It carried anyway. You needed $2.4 million while I sat in an oncology waiting room. You needed 983,000 more in the Caymans. The numbers don't need your excuses anymore. Damien stepped forward. His attorney grabbed his arm. Not here, the attorney muttered. Damien shook him off. He leaned in close enough that I could smell the expensive cologne he still wore on credit. You think this makes you powerful, he hissed. You're alone. You're old. You'll regret this. I met his eyes. My voice stayed even. I already gave you 12 years of regret. This is just the receipt. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His attorney pulled him back. Serafina stood frozen, the cracked smile gone completely now. Her hands trembled at her sides. The platinum cards lay on the counter like 2 useless pieces of plastic. Marcus guided me toward the exit. We stepped into the afternoon light. The sound was visible in the distance, calm and unchanging. I did not look back. That evening I returned to the hotel. Room 312 felt smaller after the courtroom, but the quiet was deeper. I ordered a simple dinner, grilled salmon, steamed vegetables, a glass of Sancerre. The bill came to $63. I paid with the new card Marcus had arranged from the untouched trust. It cleared instantly. I ate at the desk by the window, watching the navigation lights move across the dark water. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no frantic texts. Only the low hum of the mini-fridge and the occasional creak of the building settling for the night. At 8:47 p.m, the front desk rang. "Mrs. Voss? There's a delivery for you. Plain cardboard box, no return address. The courier said it was urgent." I told them to bring it up. 2 minutes later, a young bellman knocked. He set the box on the luggage rack and left without a word. I waited until the door clicked shut before I approached it. The box was sealed with clear tape, no label, just my name printed in black marker. I sliced the tape with the hotel keycard and lifted the flaps. Inside, wrapped in plain white tissue, lay my late husband's watch collection. The Patek Philippe rose gold, the vintage Rolex he had worn the day we signed the trust papers. The Cartier tank he had given me on our 30th anniversary. Every piece returned. A small folded note rested on top. "We're sorry." No signature, no explanation, just those 2 words in Damien's hurried handwriting. I lifted the rose gold watch. The metal was cool against my palm. I held it for a long moment, remembering Richard's steady pulse beneath it the last time he wore it. Then I placed it back inside the box, folded the tissue neatly, and closed the lid. I carried the box to the closet and set it on the top shelf. The numbers had spoken. The watches had come home. And somewhere across town, in the glass mansion with the half-painted walls, 2 platinum cards were still being declined, while the freeze on $3.2 million held firm. I poured the last of the Sancerre and stepped onto the balcony. The night air tasted of salt and finality. Tomorrow the audit would deepen. Tomorrow the SEC would ask more questions. Tonight I simply stood and breathed. The silence that followed the delivery was the most elegant I had ever heard. The final hearing was set for the following Thursday. 43 minutes, the court clerk had said. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. in the same navy coat, the same wedding band on my left hand. The courtroom looked smaller in the morning light, the oak benches worn smooth by years of other people's reckonings. Marcus waited at our table with a single slim drive in his hand. Damien and Serafina were already seated. Their attorneys had multiplied, 3 now, all in darker suits than before. The geriatric expert was gone. In his place sat a fresh-faced associate clutching a thick binder labelled "Undue Influence Evidence." Serafina's eyes were puffy beneath concealer. Damien's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Neither looked at me. The judge entered at 9 sharp. No recess this time. He opened the file and nodded once. "Petitioners have filed an amended motion," he said. "They now claim Mrs. Eleanor Voss exerted undue influence over her late husband's 2011 estate planning. They request the court set aside the trust addendum and restore them as co-trustees." Damien's lead attorney stood. His voice was smoother than last week, rehearsed. "Your Honour, the video testimony we are about to present will show Richard Voss was already in declining health when the addendum was signed. Mrs. Voss was the sole person present. She controlled every decision. This is textbook undue influence." They played the clip. Grainy footage from a hospital room I barely remembered. Richard's voice was weak, but the words were clear. They had edited it to make him sound confused. I watched without blinking. Marcus did not interrupt. When the clip ended, He simply plugged the slim drive into the courtroom laptop. "Your Honor," he said, "we have the unedited original from the same day, recorded by Mr. Voss himself on his personal phone. No edits, no cuts." The screen lit up again. Richard sat propped against pillows, oxygen tube faint under his nose. His eyes were sharp, the same eyes that had once stared down bankers and won. He looked straight into the camera. "If anything happens to me," he said, voice steady despite the rasp, "Eleanor decides everything. No one else, not the children, not the lawyers. She built this trust with me. She guards it. That's final." He paused, coughed once, then added the line I had never heard before. "And if they ever try to take it from her, she has my full permission to burn the whole thing down before she lets them touch a cent." The courtroom was silent except for the soft whir of the projector fan. The judge leaned back. "Mr. Voss appears quite competent to me." Damien's attorney tried one more objection. The judge raised the same finger he had used last time. "Enough." He ruled in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Full restoration of the Voss family trust to Mrs. Eleanor Margaret Voss as sole discretionary trustee. Immediate removal of Damien and Serafina Voss as co-trustees. All frozen accounts, $3.2 million, released to Mrs. Voss within 48 hours. The Petitioners' Counsel is referred to the State Bar Association for ethics review regarding the Cayman filings. He looked at Damien and Serafina directly. "You are ordered to vacate the modernist residence within 30 days. Title transfers to Mrs. Voss. Any further contact with Mrs. Voss outside of counsel will result in a restraining order and contempt charges." The gavel came down. I stood. My knees did not shake. Marcus closed his briefcase with a soft click. We walked down the center aisle. Damien stepped into the path. 3 seconds. No more. His attorney tried to pull him back. Damien shook him off. He stared at me, eyes bloodshot. "This isn't over." I stopped exactly 1 pace away. The courtroom lights caught the edge of my wedding band. "You offered to put me in assisted living," I said. My voice was quiet, almost conversational. "I will give you $50,000 right now if you can prove to me that you ever treated someone kindly who couldn't give you money." Damien opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His lips moved once, then stilled. Serafina stood behind him, face the color of ash. I waited 3 full seconds more. Nothing. I stepped around him and kept walking. The heavy courtroom doors closed behind us with a solid thud. Marcus exhaled once in the hallway. That was the cleanest takedown I've seen in 23 years. I nodded once. The numbers did the heavy lifting. We stepped into the afternoon sun. My phone buzzed with a single bank alert. The first of the frozen funds had begun to move. $3.2 million, returning home. 2 weeks later, Serafina's micro-brand filed for bankruptcy. The Mindful Gratitude journals that had sold for $400 each were suddenly worth nothing. Creditors seized the inventory, the website, the leased office in Soho. 1 month after that, the modernist mansion went into foreclosure. The glass walls that had once reflected Long Island Sound now reflected only auction signs. The bank statements arrived in my new P.O. box. Clean, final. $8.9 million cash offer already on the table. I read the documents at the small kitchen table of the modest waterfront house I had bought 3 towns away. The garden outside needed tending. The grandchildren were coming next weekend, without their parents. I set the papers down and looked out at the water. The silence that settled over everything was deeper than any courtroom could ever be. I sold the modernist mansion for $8.9 million cash. The closing took place on a crisp October morning, exactly 37 days after the final gavel fell. I sat at the long conference table in Marcus's office, signed the last page, and watched the wire confirmation appear on my phone. $8,900,000. Available balance. No drama, no speeches, just the quiet click of the escrow officer's pen and the soft rustle of papers sliding across polished walnut. I drove away from the glass house without looking back. The realtor had already staged it for the buyers, a young tech couple from Manhattan who wanted the view but would never know the blood in the numbers. 3 towns south, I pulled into the driveway of a modest cedar-shingled house perched above a quiet cove. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a garden that actually needed tending. The previous owner had left behind a pair of pruning shears and a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. The roses fight back in June. Let them. I smiled for the first time in weeks. The grandchildren started visiting every other weekend. They arrived by train with small backpacks and wide eyes, no parents in tow. We planted tomatoes in the raised beds on Saturday mornings. We baked simple apple crisp on Sunday afternoons. They never asked why Nana's house was smaller, or why their father's car no longer sat in the old driveway. I never volunteered the story. Children should not carry the weight of ledgers. I sat on the screened porch most evenings with a single glass of Sancerre. The wine cost $22 a bottle now. Nothing extravagant, just cold and clean. I watched the light change over the water from pale gold to deep indigo while the gulls wheeled overhead. Sometimes I held the rose-gold Patek Philippe in my palm, feeling its steady weight, remembering the man who once wore it. The watch ticked on, indifferent to everything that had happened. Damien worked as a junior analyst again. Salary, $78,000. No bonuses, no corner office, no platinum card. I knew because the forensic investigator sent one final, discreet update before closing his file. Damien commuted by train now, carrying a plain leather briefcase instead of the monogrammed one. Serafina deleted every social media account the week after the bankruptcy filing. The comments had turned vicious. Screenshots of the declined cards, the frozen wires, the emptied trust. She tried to rebrand once under a new name. The internet remembered. I never changed my number. They never called. That silence, truly, was the most elegant I had ever heard. Money could never buy back the 12 years they tried to erase me. It could never restore the oncology weights, the quiet nights I spent balancing their books while they laughed in my bedroom. But paperwork? Paperwork could erase an empire in a single afternoon. A few signatures, a handful of bank statements, one unedited video from a dying man, and $3.2 million walked back to the rightful owner like it had never left. I am at peace now, completely, quietly, at peace. The garden needs weeding tomorrow. The grandchildren will arrive on Friday with new drawings for the refrigerator door. The sound will keep changing colours at dusk, and the numbers in my accounts will stay exactly where they belong. No more wires without my name. No more locks changed behind my back. I finished the last of the Sancerre and set the glass down on the wide wooden rail. The air smelled of salt and cut grass and the faint sweetness of late-blooming roses. What surprised me most was how quickly everything unraveled once the first document was filed. One alert on a phone in an oncology waiting room. One cloud backup they forgot existed. One video they never knew was saved. And just like that, the empire they thought they owned folded in on itself with the neat precision of a bank statement. If you have ever watched someone try to steal what you built with love, only to hand you the receipts of their own ruin, you understand the particular stillness that follows. Drop your thoughts below. What moment in this story hit you hardest? The changed locks? The declined platinum cards in the courthouse café? Or the final silence when they never called? If you want the next long-form story in this series, tell me the theme, another family trust, an inheritance war, or something even darker. And hit like and subscribe so you never miss when karma collects with receipts. I will be right here on the porch, waiting for the light to change again.